I'm so deeply honored and grateful that you're joining me for a fresh approach to painting, Gateway to the Inner Artist. In this video of a fresh approach to painting, 12 steps to revealing your inner artist, we're going to show you a wonderful palette to use for acrylic and how to set up the palette properly. We use the Masterson travel palette. Now the Masterson palette comes in two sizes, but we're going to use the small size, which is the travel palette. Here it is, and when it comes to you, it comes with three pieces. The paper, this is the paper that the paint goes on. It comes with a sponge and the actual plastic tray. So all you have to do is take your sponge, put some water on it, get it nice and wet. You'll see that it comes with a diamond shape on one side. That's the side you place down in the plastic container. Then you wet your paper. Now the instructions will tell you to put the paper in a microwave first. I don't do that. I've tried it both ways, and to me it makes absolutely no difference. So take your sponge, put it in your container, put your paper and right on top. Also, a little tip is that underneath that wet sponge you put some pennies. Now the copper in the pennies is supposed to keep the sponge from getting moldy. Remember that prior to 1982 there was copper and pennies. So if you're going to use this little tip, use pennies prior to 1982. So okay, you've got your wet sponge in your plastic container. You've got your paper on top of your sponge. You're putting your cover on top of the plastic container. It's sealed nicely, and this will keep your paints wet till the next time you use them. In a fresh approach to painting, we love to give you money-saving tips. So here's one for your palette. When you buy the Masterson travel palette, the refills come this size. You get a few of them for about $7. If you have a guillotine or a scissors at home and would like to buy the large size sheets that come 30 in a pack and want to cut them up yourself, you can make about 60 of them that will fit this size for about $12. Now that your Stay Wet palette is all ready for paint, the easiest way to set it up is to squeeze out your paint in a worm-like fashion. So I'm going to take my white Liquitex paint and squeeze a worm across one end. Notice I'm using the short end. And I'm going to take the paint colors that I'm using for the particular painting that I'm working with. So I'm using blue. Again, I'm using a worm-like shape. Using another blue. And I'm placing them side by side. Now, red is not a similar color to blue. So I'm going to put that on the opposite side of the palette. I'm going to continue this fashion of placing the paint on the palette by grouping my colors. I'm going to do it in a U shape, leaving the space in the center as a work area. So now I have my palette all set up the way I need it. This is the joy of using the paper palette. I can change that depending on what project I'm working on. So if I were to need a little blue, put that in the center, and I'm going to take a little bit of white. Remember what I told you about not contaminating the entire tube of white. So you see how I was able to pull that off If I had just a big glob of white, I would have contaminated my entire white portion of paint. So let me give you a little tip on how important it is to keep your colors pure on your palette and why we set up our palette the way we do. We put the blues on one side and the oranges on the other. Take a look at this color wheel. We have the blues on one side and the oranges on the other. These colors complement each other. They are complementary colors. If you put these colors side by side, they make each other pop. But if you mix blue and orange, you're going to end up with mud. So let's go back to our palette. Keep your colors separate and nice and pure. Don't let them touch each other, and go ahead and keep your brush nice and clean. And when you go ahead and you need a color, just scoop a little bit of the paint up, put it in the center, and if you have to mix, which you don't mix very much with acrylic, scoop a little bit of the blue here on one side, and there you go, you're working in that center area. These simple tips will develop good habits. Don't worry, in time, this process will become smooth and natural as you develop your own style of painting.